So the last topic that we're going to talk about is very, very important. Okay. And so to demonstrate this concept, okay, what I have here is I went ahead and I used our pivot table to compute the average GPA, the average college GPA of people um, relative to their drug use. Okay, so you can see here, have you ever tried an illegal drug? Here are people who answered no. Here are people who answered yes. And it looks like the people who answered yes have a slightly lower college GPA. Okay, 2.95 as opposed to 3.30. Okay, so so what does that mean? Okay, if you showed somebody this data, if you showed most people this data, they'd probably reach the conclusion that, maybe drug use leads you to have a lower GPA, right? You're spending the whole day like smoking weed instead of doing your homework or something, you're going to have a lower GPA. Okay, and if you showed most people this data, I think that's probably what they would conclude. Okay, um, and that's possible. Okay, it's possible that that's the case. However, we need to consider at least two other possibilities. Okay, whenever you find an association between two variables, whether it's in your pivot table or whether it's in a scatter plot or whether you compute like a positive correlation between those two variables, any kind of statistical association that you find between those two variables, okay, there's always three possible ways to explain it, okay? It could be that one variable causes the other, okay, so let's call them x and y. It could be that x causes y. But it could also be that y causes x. Or it could be that a third factor, z, causes both x and y. Okay? So for example, take this case of drug use, right? Let's say that our x variable is drug use and our y variable is GPA. So it could be that drug use causes your GPA to be lower. That would be this x causes y possibility. But another way to interpret that same result would be to say that it's perhaps driven the other way, what's known as reverse causality. It could be that having a lower GPA causes you to use drugs. Okay, that would lead to the exact same relationship that we found. Okay, so in other words, imagine, so let's say that, you're just, let's say that you're not doing very well in school. Okay, so you look at your GPA, you look at your report card, and you're like, oh man, I got college GPA like 1.2 or something like that. You know, um, okay, well then you might begin to think of yourself, like especially if you got like poor grades a lot, you might just begin to think, hey, maybe I'm just not very smart, or maybe I'm just like a D student. Hey, look, I'm not an A or a B student. I'm like a C or a D student. Okay. And so that might sort of cause you to become very, very demotivated, right? You might not just be very motivated to engage in schoolwork at all. In that case, you're probably going to have a lot more free time, and you might use that free time to, for example, drink or do drugs. Okay. So, we initially viewed this evidence as, using drugs could change your GPA. It could be the other way around. It could be that having the lower GPA encourages greater drug use. Okay. So that's this Y causing X scenario. Or it could be a third factor causing both. And in fact, this possibility is very common. Okay. So for example, that third factor could be something like income. Okay. So we know, for example, that students who are from poorer neighborhoods usually have less access to education, okay, which would obviously result in lower grades, but potentially they might have greater access to drugs, okay? And so in that case, this relationship between, you're looking at the relationship and you're saying, hey, maybe drug use causes lower grades. It could have nothing to do with that. And it could simply be the fact that you have people of different income levels in your data set. And the people with higher income levels tend to use less drugs and have a higher GPA, and vice versa for the people with a lower income level. Okay, so this is a very important concept to understand. you see that two variables have some sort of relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that one causes the other. It could instead be reverse causation, or it could be a third factor causing both. Okay? Um, I will show you guys some additional examples of that on the homework as well. Okay? So the name for this concept, you've probably heard people talk about this idea before. The sort of the buzzword that goes along with this is that correlation does not imply causation. Okay? Um, some of you probably have heard that before. What does that mean? That means just because two variables are correlated, okay, you put them in a scatter plot and you find a positive correlation, it doesn't mean that there's a causal effect, a cause and effect relationship between one variable and the other. It could be, in fact, the opposite causal relationship that you expect. It could be that the second variable causes the first, okay, or it could be some third factor causing both of them. Okay, hope that makes sense. So the homework, okay, is going to ask you guys to practice using all of the concepts we just talked about in this series of videos. Okay, so I suppose that's it. Okay. Um, so is there anything I want to say to finish things off? So first of all, I hope that you've enjoyed the class. Okay, I hope that you've learned something about economics. Hopefully, I've shown you some things you haven't seen before. Okay, and going forward, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer. I hope you guys do well on your finals. Make sure you study for the final for this class. I'm going to continue to be on online office hours Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays during the normal time. You got questions on anything about the final. You got questions on, for example, the review sheet, okay, or the study guide that I posted. Just contact me during those times. Okay, so otherwise, good luck on all of your work that's due at the end of the semester. And I hope you guys have a good summer. All right.